with due respect to Tyson Fury and that lot, I think he'd beat Fury.
Yeah.
I think he'd beat all of them.
In his prime, he was pretty much unbeatable, Naseem Hamed. Yeah. I think 3 at ringside, 2 behind. So I'm just being honest.
Welcome to Talk Boxing, the Q&A with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. As you know, keep liking and subscribing, keep watching the videos, but more importantly, keep sending in the brilliant questions that myself and Spencer read and try to answer. Spence, first question out of the gate is from Gary Moore. Kicks us off. You can be the promoter of any heavyweight fighter in history and bring them back into the modern era. Who would you pick and lead to a successful career? Right, I'm going to go first.
I knew you'd do that.
I've learned my lessons, right? I'm going to go first.
When you go.
I would inevitably, it's formulaic and it might be lazy, but I would bring Tyson.
See what I mean?
Because you can't not.
You can't not bring it back, because like if you go from like 86 to 90, or from 86 to 90, really, that man was a phenomenon. And I just think that if his career would have been guided right and his management would have been right and you would have been promoted right, he would have been like an all-time great superstar. And I think we lost the best years of him.
I was watching something the other day. I was watching his fight with Mitch Green. Remember that?
Wow, yeah.
And the absolute needle. Before they had the altercation in Brooklyn when he beat him up and knocked him out. That was after he'd already booked in a fight. But you just saw Tyson at his most rawest, most ferocious. And then, of course, you can look back on his wins against Berbick to start the whole thing off after Custamato had sadly passed away and Kevin Rooney was in the corner, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
And then he moved on from Berbick into the other fights up to
Pinkland Thomas, Tyrell Biggs,
Tony Tucker, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and you get up to Michael Spinks, who looked like he was physically frightened in the ring. Yeah. And I just think that Tyson, I just think he'd clean everyone's clock in this time as well. Yeah, I think he'd beat a lot of them. With due respect to Tyson Fury and that lot, I think he'd beat Fury. Yeah. I think he'd beat all of them.
Yeah, forget the size and all that. That guy used his lack of height and, you know, he's so powerful. Yeah, I think that's who I would have chose, definitely.
Right, disconcerting that we agree, but there we are. QB Rhino. All right, I don't know what QB's there as well. How highly did you rate Prince Naseem Hamed? Does he go down as a UK great?
Yeah, definitely.
Does he?
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. He was.
Well, then exaggerate upon it, expand upon it. Don't just make it as a statement. Sport it, back it up, so we can debate it.
In his early days, when he won that world title, I think he'd done like 20 odd defences or something. He beat some great fighters along the way, and I just think he was an exceptional talent. I think he's underrated.
Who was the one he said?
And I think he's remembered for the Barrera loss.
Who was the one who told him he was going to smoke his boots? Kevin Kelly.
When he went over to Madison Square Garden and just, if you look back at his early fights when he won that world title, I mean,
but I had this conversation with Johnny Nelson, and I also had it with Barry McGuigan about Naseem Hamed. Right, about the attitude of Naseem Hamed to Steve Robinson.
Yeah.
And fights like that where he took the piss.
Yeah. And
I felt he went from beyond the level of professional respect into a different place, and it always sort of clouded my judgment against him. And then I end up with Marco Antonio Barrera.
That's where everyone ends.
And
that's the problem.
The fact that he never wanted to fight him again.
Yeah, but you know what it was then? The hunger had left him, the boxing had left him then. He was out like he was a stone and a half overweight 3 days before or something. He was a stone. The guy didn't train properly. I think the fight had left him by that stage, and that's unfortunately what he's judged for now. And I just think if you go back to his prime, like Mike Tyson, in his prime, he was pretty much unbeatable, Naseem Hamed.
If you put him in against McGuigan, who would have won that fight?
Naseem Hamed, I think in his prime.
Really?
In his prime.
Even though McGuigan beat Eusebio Pedrosa, that was the
stylistically, but McGuigan was a pressure fighter that come forward square on. Naz was great at working the angles. Yeah, big left hooks, but Naz was an incredible talent.
Raza Rafiq. Why isn't there a depth of heavyweight boxers from the US like there was in the past? If you don't know, just say you don't know.
I don't really know, if I'm totally honest. Yeah, I just don't think that. I think there's more opportunity out in America now with scholarships and
you don't know, do you?
Going into football, etc., and that's
a good point.
That's what I base it on.
That's a good point.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Thank you.
Because I've spoken to a few NFL players that have come in and done other shows who started off in boxing and said,
why do you always have to go
actually, because I wanted to see if you knew.
Yeah, well, I do.
I didn't think you did know. and now that you do know, I'm going to give it due credit.
Thank you.
That they were suggesting that the opportunities in other sports were more compelling, and the finances that were involved in other sports, and the exit strategies, because a lot of people end up in boxing because they come from a background which is underprivileged.
So you're echoing what I said.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, great.
No, you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
And I don't need to top and tail it because you've nailed it, Spence. Our next question is from Daniel Davey. Do you think that for at least world title fights, you should have more than 3 judges? Some of those being sat at different angles and also in soundproof rooms, which is where you should be, to stop home fighters from influencing scoring.
Yeah. Do I think there should be? Yeah. I think that if we had 3 judges that actually could score fights, sometimes it's the frustration when you see them in these big fights because the scoring recently has been terrible. I think the answer to that is yes, we could do more judges maybe at ringside, well, maybe not at ringside, but behind the scenes, so they're not influenced. I think that would be a great move.
Because Ben Shalom mentioned at some point, and then rode back a little bit, didn't he, about the VAR, which is the football video assistant referee, but the analysis of videos. And when we mentioned it to Robert Smith, he went, "How's the fuck is that going to work then?"
Yeah,
because it's more.
He's got a point though. If the geezer's already been knocked out or whatever, and it's been a low blow, you know.
Yeah. So I suppose it could be about for scoring in terms of if you're looking at judges and scoring things and being able to look back at them during the break, you could score by looking at videos more extensively. At this moment in time, the scoring system is a little ambiguous, isn't it?
I
about
agree.
What one fighter sees there. Or these referees like a bit more aggression. These referees like this. This is this, that, and the other. There's too much subjectivity, isn't there?
Yes. I think 3 at ringside, 2 behind. Just being honest. That's frustrating though, isn't it? Like some of the results that we see these days, and it's sort of, it's very frustrating. So 2 behind,
especially
behind the scenes, without any influence of crowds or anything. We've got 5 judges, and away we go.
I have to say, Spence, when I read these names out, I always feel like I'm about 12 years age and should be spinning on my head. Finally, Gamer Boy T asks, if you could change any rule in boxing, what would it be?
I've sort of just answered it, but you tell me. What would you?
Well, I think we both go down the pathway of saying scoring needs to be less subjective and more objective. We both understand that. But I think one of the things that infuriates people is the failure for mandatory fights to happen when they should, and this preparedness to suggest that people can sit on a belt for a year and mandatories don't make themselves happen. And Dillian White can piss and complain for years. He doesn't get an opportunity. So there should be, if we're going to have this age of this ridiculous amount of belts.
Yes.
And these ridiculous amount of so-called world champions. Yes. And they are world champions. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but there's too many. Too many divisions. Then there has to be a better assessment of when mandatories happen, and they must happen within a certain period of time. Medical conditions accepted. Yeah. So if people are fit to fight and brain scans allow for it to happen, that they should be then, bang, one fight finishes, another one must be mandated and completed within 6 months.
Like that. Definitely. I think that's the way forward.
Great minds think alike, Spence.
That was the way forward. Do you know it was 6 months
Stick
when I was
me,
boxing?
Kiddo. We'll fly, you and I.
Just letting you know that I had to box my mandatories every 6 months. Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
And it was tough.
Good.
It was tough.
Good. But you felt so much. You would have felt more like a man as a result of it, yes? More like a competitor.
Yeah, I think so.
Very good. Okay. That's it for this week's edition of Talk Boxing, the Q&A with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Don't forget, of course, to keep liking and subscribing. But as again, equally as importantly, to keep leaving those brilliant questions in the comment section below. Me, an old mandatory boy over there. See you next week.